Manana Sizu's colleagues, Imina 35 na legislature in Guam is back from recess. When we last left, colleagues, just as an update, we set aside Bill 330-35 and we moved on to Bill 374-35 LS. And at this time, I will recognize 374-35 COR, I apologize. And I'm going to go ahead and recognize Senator Joseph Augustine. You are recognized.
Buenas and todos and Sizus Marci, Madam Speaker. Bill number 374-35 COR is an act to cancel the 2020 primary election for certain offices or party election. Yesterday, we conducted a public hearing on Bill 374 and 375. And I thank the Committee on Rules and the body for allowing us to conduct that public hearing. We spent almost 5 hours discussing and hearing testimony from stakeholders. Of these stakeholders, our Guam Election Commission was present and answered a multitude of questions around the process of election, from early voting to voting by mail and election day at the precincts. Additionally, the Department of Public Health and Social Services was represented by their Center for Disease Control staff, who shared their thoughts on what may be the best and worst case scenarios in conducting elections during this pandemic. It seemed to me that we were really looking at the health and safety components of holding election. It is important for us to look closely at what we may be opening ourselves to should these elections be held, whether in part or whole. I'm taking these considerations to best preparing ourselves. In my opening statement on Bill 374, I stated that we all know that our public health emergency is still ongoing and that the effects of COVID-19 in Guam is still very relevant. Every single family is affected by COVID, and we must work towards protecting ourselves and one another from further spread. But we must not stop what we need to do to ensure our families and our island move forward. Bill 374 calls for a condensed primary election, where only contested races will hold primary elections. Although it still requires the electorate to come out and vote for the candidate of choice, we can do this carefully by following the protocols set out by executive order that require appropriate masks, wearing, hand washing, and social distancing. Not too long ago, the Guam Election Commission conducted the Jonah special election and was successful in ensuring these mandates were followed. Yes, it took additional staff and additional measures. But if that is what we need to do, we should. With every voter's assistance, they will be able to do this again on a larger scale. The success of the Joni election came from the support of the Guam Election Commission connecting and meeting with the governor's physicians team, specifically Dr. Mike Cruz and Dr. Jolene Uggan, along with Dr. Hancock of the Center for Disease Control. This assisted them in preparing safety protocols for the special election. As far as we know, the GEC did an excellent job in ensuring there was no direct spread of COVID at that public event, where 52% of eligible voters in Jonah participated. In following with the protocols and measures put in place, we can ensure that the transmission of COVID is prevented, and that we are still able to carry on with making our decision as to who will represent us in our villages, legislature, and in Congress. We cannot put a hold on our lives, knowing that these protocols are meant to protect us, and when we properly use them, they work. And thanks to my colleagues for their support, co-sponsor of Bill 374, Speaker Tina Munoz-Barnes, Senator Kelly Mars Taitano, Senator Jose Pito Terlay, Vice Speaker Talina Nelson, and Senator Clint Rigel. At the end of the day, we learned that the probability of a runoff for the congressional race is high, as the winner will require to attain 50% plus 1 votes, and that the GEC is dedicated in their work to fight COVID by ensuring proper protocols are instituted at the polling sites for the health and safety of our people. So saving money would not prevail. So until we are COVID-free, wash your hands, wear your mask, and keep your distance. Sizus Masi, Madam Speaker, and colleagues, for your support. I have submitted my withdrawal of Bill 374-35 COR. Madam Speaker, you are in possession of that withdrawal, and I thank you, my colleagues.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. Madam Clerk. Senator Lee, I had your hands raised. I'll go ahead and recognize you. Do you have a point of information?
I did have a point of information, Madam Speaker, and good morning to you and good morning, colleagues. Just that committee report for Bill 374-35 COR had not been received by the Committee on Rules as of this morning, but since the motion was made by Senator San Augustine, I think that's a moot point.
Senator Lee, for that, to my colleagues, I want to note that I just received this letter for withdrawal of Bill 374-35 addressed to me. With that being said, the bill has been withdrawn, and now we will move over to Bill 375-35. Senator Jim Moylan, you are recognized on your bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill number 375-35 core on the third reading file, and I would like to discuss it.
Before I do that, Senator Lee, Committee on Rules Chair, do you have a point of information?
Sujos Masi, Madam Speaker, just a point of information for my colleagues. A committee report for Bill 375-35 COR has also not been received by the Committee on Rules. It is not up online for the public to view, so just I leave that with the body.
Yeah. Senator Moylan, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With that said, I appreciate it, and I move to restate my motion.
Please do.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place Bill number 375-35 core on the third reading file, and I would like to discuss it.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Please
Thank you.
proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bill 375-35 is an act to amend subsection 15201 of Article 2, Chapter 15, Title 3, Guam Code annotated relative to canceling the 2020 primary election and allowing all candidates to advance to the general election. Madam Speaker, this is a bipartisan measure introduced for basically two reasons that were echoed during yesterday's public hearing testimonies. One of those reasons is regarding our community's health. Yesterday, we heard at the public hearing, we did hear testimony of the importance of not spreading and preventing the COVID-19 from going further, which this measure shall do by canceling the 2020 primary hearing. The other reason is our communities and our government's financial problem. And yesterday at the public hearing, we also heard the plea to save the island's economy, which canceling the 2020 primary hearing will help by saving approximately $400,000. We also had the opportunity yesterday with the Guam Election Commission to testify, and they did explain their timelines to consider, and they had answered our questions as well. But Madam Speaker, what we are hearing and reading about more often is the question of what are we going to do about starting up our economy and helping over 30,000 unemployed families. We're hearing about this going into our 6 months, and businesses, especially our small business, who haven't opened their doors are struggling to stay afloat. Our GovGuam revenues have fallen, and there's no plan to cut government expenses. Our consolidated revenue and expenditure reports have told us in April we were short 4.9 million. And then in May, it went up to 8.1 million shortfall. Where are our austerity measures? Where are the budget cuts? Where are they? Our executive budget submitted in FY21 is the biggest ever at 1.05 billion. And that's just not realistic at all. So let's not wait for the next consolidated revenue expenditure reports. Rather, let's protect our people's health today with moving this bill 375-35 forward. And also, let's start cutting expenses to help our island's economy. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I look forward to the discussion on this bill.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Anyone else on the main motion? On the main motion? On the main motion? If not, Senator Clint and then Senator Castro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a point of inquiry for the author of the measure, if he would yield.
Yes, please state your question, Senator Clint.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the author of the measure, how will the government of Guam save money if a runoff election is required? As per some testimony received by a member of the Republican Party, Juan Carlos Benitez, during the public hearing yesterday, indicated that he believed that the likelihood of a runoff election is high, considering a three-way race in the congressional election. Then the testimony from the Guam Election Commission was that if there is to be a runoff election, then there would be virtually no savings. So how would we save money if there is a runoff election?
Senator Moylan, would you like to yield?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the question. If I was to go on the ifs, I'd rather not. But I know what is concrete. And by canceling the 2020 primary election, we will save the money. If I try to guess or assume or flip a coin whether or not there will be a runoff election, I wouldn't know. But in the meantime, we know we have the opportunity to save the government some money and also to protect the community from the COVID by not having the public involved in the primary elections. So let's see, Madam Speaker. Let's just move forward. There's no guarantee there will or will not be a runoff election. I'm not sure, but the guarantee is, as of today, if we don't have the primary election, we're guaranteed to save that money today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Clint, does that suffice?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Anyone else on the main motion? Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Will Castro, you are recognized.
Sijusmasi, Madam Speaker. Bulan no guaha para besangan pod estina preniponi. Lo dispensa angin tisinya unhungo kafa komekileko tisinya angin sina no hungo afa no kekesangan na pretalai estina face mask no. Antes no ditutuhon balago na bay na holom estina sininteko isentimento pariman membro siha guini. Before I start, Madam Speaker, I want to enter into the public record for the sake of a spirited and healthy and clean debate on this very important measure, that my comments are not directed at any individual. I'm merely restating the rules that we accepted to abide by. But if it's assigned to you, if I assign my comments and my questions to you, Speaker, let it be because you are the prime or supportive author. But even with that, Madam Speaker, when I speak, when I do speak and I offer my comments and my sentiments, it's not meant to attack your character or your integrity. Rather, as I stated earlier and I tried to uphold in prior sessions, it is my sincere attempt to play by the rules. But you know, Madam Speaker, we've seen all too often that no matter what is said, sometimes people may ascribe the comments to themselves as a personal attack. And all I want to say before proceeding down this line, maybe I should quote a senior statesman who once graced this hall who's no longer with us. Because it doesn't matter if I criticize the bill or pay you a compliment. If people are looking for fault and ascription of some type of comment, you'll do that anyway. But in the words of one senator, and he's a Democrat, Madam Speaker, "Gifenotnya, if the shoe fits, wear it." Sa jangin untungo hafa komekeleku et mas gehilo pues lagga listu zupago tatatuhon no okay et mas gehilo pagugwa na anay utaytay estinalay dispensa malago jo na be kahulu po edjo na kilis jono na senador pat ibidonya antes no ma-introduce ipiniponya aagango ki telefonho kwesa na ijo professional consideration. Antes no tutuhon ni public hearing, anay manadza ni public hearing, antes tutuhon pago na session, guidza lokwi ama aagango. Put edzo na rason hu tatso po guidza magahit kilis jono si Senator Joe San Agustin. Thank you, Senator, for the professional courtesy on an all-important measure that would affect not just my election, but the election of every candidate who, before these bills were introduced, esta mana entry ma-introduce i-aplikasyon niya. Esta ma-deklaro po di familianya, ginibandan familianya, ginibandan ni partidenya, hafa mas malago niya, po desti mamala na permit na election. Pues pagogawa na po introduce, po na diskuti esti na line. Madam Speaker, bulagay be songan po desti. So po dedzo, malago dun ang bifaisin ni man playaw siya gigehilo. Let me know if I'm running out of my time, because I will plead for my colleagues' time to finish my thoughts. Because like the commission, I too didn't have enough time to react to a bill that was introduced less than a week and a half ago, to react to the input from the public hearing less than 24 hours ago, and to get my thoughts together to deliver a cohesive, coherent debate on the matter. Lo, polo adzabe tsatsagi pogo.
Consigue mo na, Senator
Jesus
Wells.
Masi. You know, antes no matuzugwini husangani tuno atongo gigo mao. Polo po detu na dos na piniponi. Polo adza si Jews. Let God handle this because it directly affects me. I don't want this to be about me. We are all conflicted in this race, maybe with the exception of one good senator behind me. But make no mistake about it, changing the rules at the 11th hour puts everybody at risk. And I'm going to debate the issues on the merits that were discussed in the bill and on the points that were raised at the public hearing. Just give me a moment. But the reason why I brought that up, the reason why I started, Madam Speaker, was saying that this issue is not just about me. Sa nigap niya na gitalawani huhungong na bulo ng manggay toto na kandidato siya manafekta lokwi. Sa haji po na tatso po siya. Haji, tayo official pago gi partidon i Demokrato, i man Republican, disti pago tiyo hungong no, or tiyo li kata ni partido ko. Lau guaho be tatso po senyor sa gulaf. Gihaja. Guaho. Polo adja guaho na maisa be tatso po si senyor Santos and si Sanchez. Gilago. Oh, not just that, Madam Speaker. I'm going to speak to the issue of depriving the voters of their right to stand through political affiliation on the side of the party to advance their agenda. And I get it. I'm not just going to kick this off with some rhetoric. I get it. I'm going to address the public health concerns. I'm going to address this issue of monetary value upon our democracy and the right to exercise that. And I'm going to ask very poignant question, hafa mas malago mo tatsogi na para defendi sa protectay iman tautotono. When I'm done, Madam Speaker, I hope I'm going to say it up front now so they can have time to think about this. At the end of the day, Madam Speaker, it doesn't matter if there's COVID today or COVID tomorrow or COVID yesterday. At some time in your life, you're going to have to make a decision. Debinu umasto mongo hafasinya unsogwi. Gi familiam mo, gi lugat mitsu. Bars are opening up. Restaurants are opening up. Soon we're going to open up flights. You can go to the Micronesia Mall. You can go shop at Payless. You can even go to the beach. Lo pagugwa put esti na okasyon, wahabula gi hinenggem mo. You're not changing the rules of the game. You're actually saying, let's just forget the game. Let's go straight to the Super Bowl. You know, Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, I'm way off my talking points. But I'm moved to action on this issue. What's happening right here, right now, is basically somebody saying, we know how we love our Little League Baseball, Madam Speaker. Bula no guy no tau gwini. Yes, mas jana I gondo bomola. They love to play baseball or softball. Let's talk about baseball. I'm not a baseball player, I'm a football player. But let's talk about baseball because everybody else is, and I've been supporting these things. What's happening now is we have internal competition, let's say in the baseball league, okay, the Babe Ruth or whatever those are. They compete amongst our islanders and our villages, sometimes multiple teams in a village. Then they go on to the island-wide level, then they go on to the district level, and then they go on to the oceanic level, and then they go on to the national level. What's happening here? Pagguguat na liyestin na klase ng eleksyon. All of a sudden, we're going to send everybody straight to the World Series at the same time. Taimano pong gando etsu. Na wego. O tunga na tigos malatio no tomtomo gini guihi ni guma itaw pano. But I'll tell you, I have a little bit of what I pick up at the house. And I want to share some of that with you because it wasn't until the hearing yesterday, it wasn't until I sat down with my dad and the family Kasinan Sanhizong that it really came to light what's at stake here. You know, yesterday, there's something that COVID brought to my life. It's the ability to recognize and appreciate and act upon the need to be with family. And one of my colleagues had mentioned that we go outside and we spend time with family, right? Whether it's soba, whether it's curry, it doesn't matter. Amigosu, keligwe, it doesn't matter. But yesterday was one of those days. And I went and I sat down with my dad, who's a retiree. And he's like receiving 3 pensions. And that's great. Good for him. I was also sitting with my daughter, who's not fully old enough to understand, but she's telling everybody she's going to vote for her dad, you know, or to vote for her dad. And then there's Auntie Maria. Auntie Maria, Madam Speaker, Mangagi Hamzu Gibadan Mizu Gibandan Demokratu sa Poputi si Luliang. So that might be good news to you, right? Thank you for laughing. Debio na tsatsalek antis no tutun and sasangan hafano go seryoso na punto. It's important we laugh to put into context. Mano gaigi zo and malak mano zo lokwi. You know, I'm so happy that my colleague, Senator San Augustine, took the liberty to remove the I'll tell you who you can vote for bill. That's what that was about. But I'll reserve comment because I respect my colleague and I love my brother, my Tsetlu. But 375, aside from the who you can vote for bill, Bill 375 attempts to tell you when you can vote. And you only get to vote one time. And there are implications for that. And I'm going to go down because it's important that we enter into the public record the potential legal ramifications to what's about to happen in terms of materially depriving those candidates who have declared their position on the side of the party of their choosing, more so in light, and I want to thank Mr. Linsonga because I didn't know about this until I read it. My goodness, all 40 pages of that this morning around 3 o'clock. I didn't have enough time to understand all of it, but I understood 2 things. One, we're materially affected as candidates, Madam Speaker. Number 2, you're also depriving the voters of their right to choose based on political affiliation on the notion of selecting their nominee to be advanced to the general public to advance their political agenda or their political ideology. I don't know, I'm no expert, but according to that one federal court, that was an affront. It impinges upon our constitutional right somewhere in the 1st and 14th Amendment. Call me wrong, but at least call me on it. Dispensa, be faisen hamsu ko esta no man manadza ni tampoco. Okay, por favor, ang insinyo consigido, pues I will. Thank you.
Consigue
Senator
muna,
Masi.
Senator.
Estina Priniponi, Madam Speaker, attempts to strip the government of the people, by the people, and for the people of their ability to vote in the primary election. And during these tough COVID times, like I mentioned, the who you can vote for bill, and now the when you can vote for bill, the forgo the primary, no holds barred Super Bowl bill that's been introduced, and I'm going to get to that. Madam Speaker, before I address the public health concerns, I just want to remind my colleagues and members who at least are in my constituency and support group. The primary and general elections in the context of public health, I just want to remind you, you don't have to vote. No one's compelling you to go out and vote in the primary. And I understand if there's something wrong and you want to take additional precautions, I respect that. Lo hadzi no putsangani na ti personat esti na piniponi. Anay impolo I kalalot mo gi atodoko. Anong pega I kanay mo gi petsun totoo. Zano keke a godza I familia ko. Pun entalo I familia ko hafa sinya sogwi. Ni nayan na behu permityo na pasangani totoo tisinya no mabota sa pottijogi estimamala na permit na election. Por favor. Madam Speaker, I just want also to enter to the record to my prior statement about some legal concerns I would present. And again, we all know that I'm not a lawyer, but perhaps in the future, if you want to roll the dice and take a chance, I'm pretty sure that this would stand in a court of law, but why take that chance? That I think that if we cancel the primary election and go straight to the general, that there will be, in fact, what is known as injury in fact. This was brought up in that federal case that Mr. Linsongan raised to my attention in New York, a case under similar circumstances, that all candidates should be afforded the right to be placed on the respective primary ballots. I don't even want to spend another 30 minutes talking about why I think the Republican Party or the Democrat Party should be charged with that responsibility and to carry it out to the best of their ability. And far be it for this government to tell any not-for-profit or non-government entity how to conduct the business of their organization. Imagine you telling the Lions Club when and where to conduct their elections. That may be a stretch, but it hits home to the point I'm trying to make. Perhaps, ang insinyo pega gila masa ila masao considera I implikasyon pwede na priniponi como a pasesti. The litigation, the court cases, the associated costs, because we thought that we could do better by kicking the can down the road with respect to the pandemic. Now, again, I didn't even see a medical expert come forward and tell me that the risks are much more increased. As a matter of fact, the reverse is true. I heard from a layperson who's a subject matter expert who said they're doing everything within their political will to include disinfecting every booth. My goodness. To hand sanitizers, PPEs. I would assume they're going to put in the don't come too close provision and the only so many people can come in here provision. I'll put my faith and trust in the Guam Election Commission. And even then, why is it the burden of this government to shut everything down at the expense of a potential risk? Now, I value life, don't get me wrong. But what I value the most are my civil liberties and to decide for myself and my family who, when, what, where, and under what circumstances I will live my life. Hongi edzo, hongi. The removal of any candidate from the ballot in the primary, the complete cancellation of a ballot, in my opinion, may result in what again, I'm no lawyer, actual or concrete or particularized industries that may be fairly traceable to the actions of the Guam Legislature. Tough giegan ho organ si Senador San Agustin pues husangan gui hafagwahi ng goku podesti. Taimano po koni esti na body na legislator gikotti. sa leknyas tino of a shot gi kotin federat ti sina no husu government, state government. Lo husang anigwi loko como latsabi damo. Jan todo no manaktungok siya, iman senador siya gwining hodom. Jan mapet dio or mapet di todo no man bangay no membro siya gi partidoko. I will stand up for them and maybe there'll be injury. And maybe the cost will be irreversible. But at least I'll stand up and go into it trying to make my points very clear. What I basically try to say in a nice way is that if there is a suit to be brought with respect to any claim, injuries, that it has to be brought on an individual basis based on what little I know about the law. My concern, Madam Speaker, is that changing the rules so late in the game is going to have unintended consequences beyond the anticipated savings.
Senator, I do apologize. If you have a colleague who will yield some time to you, I will allow that at this time. To allow time. Senator Luis Muñoz.
Madam Speaker, I will yield my time to Senator Castro.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Will. You may proceed. Thank you, Senator
Thank you, Madam
Muñoz.
Speaker. I think on a lighter note, I've said more in this one session than the entire 6 months combined, and that's because I choose my fights and my words wisely. This is an important bill. The rest we could work out in the particularities of law, but this has far-reaching implications beyond election para delegado. If I may continue. Thank you, Senator Muñoz de Masi. In my case, as in the case of the mayoral candidates, canceling the primary election altogether may warrant the affected candidates or someone intervening on their behalf, such as a party, to seek prohibitory preliminary injunction against the government's action to change the status quo pursuant to the moving party, demonstrating irreparable harm, absent injunctive relief, among other things, and the balance of equities that would tip in their favor. Again, in my opinion, I look forward to the responses of my colleagues in a healthy debate, but it's my opinion that such an injunction may be sought after an anything goes, super brawl type general election. Oh, by the way, on a lighter note, ang ginhutungo na napuntalay ka, ilay, iman procedure, por este mamala na election, da sina no ubay konik masaya hodzi na kandidato, da by saga na fatosong gifyon ho. If I could choose anybody, and I'm going into this delegate race 2 against 1, and that's fine. But next time, let me know what I'm walking into, because if I could choose a partner, I'd choose Eddie Bazacalvo. Let's make it a fair fight, 2-on-2. Let's just do this. But that's not what I signed up for. That's kay hodjaw na putalay ka, ilay pogo. Pogo estano hu tutuho ni karidoho. Good for what? It's my position that the 11th hour cancel the primary initiative proffered by my colleague, Senator Moylan and Senator Talahi, will cause irreparable harm on voters' rights, the right to choose based on their political belief, and the right to associate with one another as a political party and to equal protection under the law. It may also affect the rights of candidates to associate for advancement of political beliefs. I believe it unduly restricts and impinges upon my freedom of association. It infringes upon the voters, regardless of political persuasion, to cast their votes effectively. As a matter of fact, and I'm sure many an advisor would scorn me for this, as a matter of fact, it may even deprive a particular set of candidates on the left, on the political liberal side, the opportunity for themselves to select their nominees who can push forward their agenda in a forum in accordance with the rules they establish for themselves and on equal grounds. It is clear as day, gisanlogo, piot gwini magi, gigomao gitanota, as one individual clearly stated yesterday, the laws of Guam in this case clearly affect the candidates and will always have at least some theoretical correlative effect on voters. Again, to restate, I believe that Bill 375 presents an undue hindrance to the political exchange of ideas and to political parties. It is an undue government-imposed impediment to both, on my right to associate based on political beliefs and the right to vote for a qualified candidate of my choosing in the primary election. Again, if we pass this late in the game, anything goes brawl bill, knowing full well there will be damages beyond what your money can cover, even a settlement, na para. Safa na be para ta zalakat todo zangin timadzamak. I want to say on behalf of those candidates who signed up and who have been deemed qualified to run for their respective offices, I acknowledge on both sides of the aisle, both Democrats and Republicans, that you have made tremendous political, personal, financial sacrifices to get this far. And I plead with my colleagues to closely examine what's at stake here and to move away from what I believe to be false impressions of savings and protection of the public's health and safety. The GEC, as I stated, has clearly submitted in writing its protective measures. Both bills will infringe, in my opinion, upon the qualified right of voters and candidates in the primary election. And as I stated earlier, forgive me if I wasn't clear, that there's no guarantee that there'll be less risk in the months ahead. But whether it's Bill 374, which we disposed of again, both bills would have spoke to a greater truth. Bill 375 addresses this greater truth. That if we pass either bill, we are effectively telling our people that we aren't capable of deciding for ourselves how we live our lives, whether or not we should be permitted to vote, under what conditions, and for whom and when. And I stand in rejection of all these suppositions and encourage my colleagues to do the same. Tough gigan usangani at ulo kwigigi legato. Estinang tinigin I senador gifionho the solution. Prinaponi ungan. Though this is not a solution. Zangengwahano otro na memena ponofresi na para na make good esti mamala na permit na election por favor. Wow, finina na bitatso na sa puputi, ano? Lo munga ade at zalaka, por favor. Basta munga mo na kefa maulik zangin ti madzamak. As a matter of fact, I would encourage my colleague nahihit natsansa natafana diskuti hafasinya mas at senegwi para tafana kudi sa para tafana zodadzi para iminaw leki tototano. Dispensa mas gehilo bulan no 8 na idiahu malago zo ng pun sasangan lo. I reserve the balance of my time. Situs Masi.
Buen provecho, Senador Castro. May recogniza pago si Senadoran Mary Torres. Por favor, consigamos na.
Stuart Mossy, Madam Speaker. I wanted to bring up a technical point about Bill 375 that I think we should amend, and that is, this bill is seeking to amend a section of Guam Code Annotated. Contrast that with Bill 374, which was simply an act to affect the primary. So my proposition to the authors of this measure is to consider whether it's actually more appropriate and probably more straightforward to simply make this an act to cancel the 2020 primary election and allowing all candidates to advance to the general election. Because I think that what we're contemplating here is really just a one-time effect that really doesn't have a lasting purpose or a need really to be codified. And I believe, Madam Speaker, that this position is also supported by our compiler of laws, that we need not codify this proposed bill into Guam law. So that would be my first proposed amendment for consideration by the body.
Senator Torres, I'm going to allow for a couple of minutes recess so that you can proffer that in writing right now. It should have already been done, but I understand where you're going with this.
Well, perhaps I'm going to propose it in the form of a question, and maybe it's something that the authors can yield to. I mean, certainly this can be done, but I'm just saying if you wanted to be more prudent, technically, you can just do it the way Bill 374 was done. So, and in the interest of time, I don't.
Thank you. I will yield that as a question. Senator Moylan, would you like to yield?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If I can concur, speak with the question, please.
I will
Just a
allow
minute.
for a moment's recess.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Emina 35 na legislature in Guam is back from recess. Senator Moylan, would you still like to yield?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. After speaking with my colleague, I agree to that statement. I have no comments or any other objections to that request. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mary Torres, based on that, will you proffer an amendment?
I will proffer an amendment, Madam Speaker. And yes, you're right, I probably should have done it ahead of time, but it was just a thought
That's
that
okay.
crossed
I
my
will
mind
allow
right
you
now.
that.
Thank
Just
you.
a moment's recess. Imina 35 na legislature in Guam is back from recess. At this time, colleagues, I will allow the speaker to continue her presentation and discussion on the question, and she hopes that the amendment will be done by then. So, Senator Torres, you are recognized to continue speaking on the bill.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I know that we're up against a timeline, so I just wanted to make sure that we're efficient with time as much as we can. But I originally had some reservations about Bill 375 going into this session this morning, and it wasn't until I attended the public hearing and listened to all sides that I find merit in Bill 375. And I know that there's a lot of discussion about changing the rules so late in the game, denying people their rights to choose people that they would want to advance to the general election, about the mayor's race being contested and that being unfair. But I think that what we need to do is put everything into perspective. Right now, we have a situation where 30,000 people are unemployed in Guam. Our visitor industry has no restart date right now. And so the tension is very high for us to find ways to make sure that we find savings where we can and continue to do measures that will keep us as safe as possible in this COVID-19 pandemic situation. Canceling the primary election, I believe, addresses what is an extraordinary circumstance in this COVID-19 era. It's oftentimes we want to compare and contrast. Well, this is the way it ought to be and this is the way we ought to continue it. But I think that what this COVID situation does is it's given us a situation that is unlike any other. We continually use that as a point of argument when we do things that are extraordinary, like tell people they can't go to work, prohibit people from freely moving, mandating that people quarantine themselves, allowing people to lose their jobs through no fault of their own because of the circumstances. This is the time to do things extraordinary because these are extraordinary times. And we can argue all we want about rights, but the bottom line is if there's a way to save money and if there's a way to ensure that at least there's some level of safety, then you take that step, I believe. As far as leveling the playing field, there's much discussion about the mayoral races and how unfair that is to have certain municipalities where it's highly contested and allowing several candidates to advance to the general. How fair is that? Well, perhaps it's not, but we know that in the latest special election, that was the scenario that was presented in the village of Jotnya, where they had multiple candidates. So the idea that can it work? It can work. One of the arguments that was made yesterday was this idea that regardless of how you quote unquote rig a race, what you ultimately will get at the end of a race is ideally the most qualified candidates will advance to the top, notwithstanding how many candidates you have in the playing field. There's a lot of discussion also about a runoff election. If you realize savings now, you're going to eat it up if you were to cause a runoff election in the delegate race. That may be true, but there's no guarantee as well that there's going to be a runoff election. You see, that's what I'm saying. There's no guarantees how the election will turn out, but there is one sure guarantee. If you cancel one election in the primary, if you cancel this primary race, you're going to realize savings. That's automatic. How much you realize will depend on whether you have a runoff or not, but automatically you will save that amount of money. So I just want to point out that, we can debate this until we're blue in the face, and I don't think that anybody is going to really have the most compelling argument, because there'll be people as equally passionate on the other side of the fence who have no dog in the fight, who really just look at this for what it is, the principle of a fair and equal election. But I think that our challenge, what I can gauge from the general public, the challenge is, what are you doing to contain the costs of the government in these very austere times where we're not sure when our main economic driver is going to pick up again and resume? We're not sure how we're going to be once the federal aid to our families has ended. There's so many unsures. One thing that we are trying to make sure of is that we can at least guarantee some savings with the primary. And in the event there's no runoff, you'll have a pretty clear number of how much you've saved. Many people will argue that this COVID has resulted in extreme infringements of our rights and privileges and our liberties. That is where we're at right now, unfortunately, in history. So to say that we can't and should not make any changes to any scheme or process in our government or how we run things in our community, I think is a little misplaced, because I think that, in fact, we have done that right now with COVID. Our kids aren't going to school. People aren't allowed to go to jobs. People aren't allowed to freely move. We're not allowed to gather in certain numbers. We're not allowed to enter places without a face mask or having our temperatures taken. There's things that are just unheard of 4 months ago. I'm speaking simply because I want to keep it to a practical point. I don't want to get emotional. I don't want to get into the weeds. But I think if the challenge to us is, how do we cut costs? How do we cut costs when we know that there are 11 villages that have no contest in their race? There's no contest now in the senatorial race for the Democrats or the Republicans. There's no contest in the OPA race. So you see already that what you're really talking about is 8 villages where there is a contest, and there's 1 delegate race where there is a contest. So the contested races have been greatly minimized. That's good reason to look at whether a primary should be canceled or not, just on those numbers alone. So that was the point that I just wanted to emphasize is I can see where the authors came to some consensus that something should be done. Where you can make a difference, that is where you should begin to make a difference. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially when you know that there's no contest in the senatorial, both sides, in the OPA, and in 11 villages, 11 out of 19. That's more than half the villages. Many of them the very large villages on Guam. So you see, it's not unreasonable. Voter turnout will likely be very low already. The likelihood, because only 1 major island-wide race is contested, the delegate race, the likelihood of crossover votes is very high. We've seen that in the past when that delegate race is contested. People, good intentions, go to cast the vote for their mayoral candidate and inadvertently cross the aisle and cast a vote for a delegate candidate that's of the other party. And they're spoiled, their ballots get spoiled. So just the crossover likelihood is something that should give us reason to want to protect those votes even more. Fewer people will come out to vote, the likelihood of crossovers is increased. You've now expanded the likelihood of disenfranchising more people. So it's not an unreasonable proposition to cancel the primary election, given what we know, given the number of mayors, the number of villages, 11 out of 19 that have no races, the senators have no races, the OPA has no race. It's just 8 villages and a delegate seat. And they can survive it. They can survive it like we've had in 3-way splits most recently, like we've had in the most recent special election in Jotnya, where there were many candidates, I think 5 candidates, I don't know for a fact. So you see the precedent is there. Are we taking away rights and liberties? And of course we are. We're taking away a lot of things right now. We're taking away the rights of people who have through no fault of their own, have no work because of this COVID pandemic. We can't put fault on anything, but we can say that we're in a situation now where things are very different. Our island is looking for ways to save money so that critical services can be preserved, so that whatever money can stay into the coffers stays in the coffers. How can you argue against that? Will there be a runoff election? Who knows? We've seen in a recent scenario where you had 2 strong candidates and 1 weak candidate, or 2 weak candidates and 1 strong candidate. You don't know. But you do know that for a fact you can at least save right now on the printing of ballots, on the election officials required to be at every single precinct if the primary proceeds as is, regardless of how many races are at stake. You know how much you can save at least now. And then in the delegate race, even if there's a runoff, you're really looking at only 1 ballot printing. So the savings, that you make now won't be totally absorbed by a runoff. I mean, just the numbers can be played out. So I just want to bring up those points because, we can get lost in the weeds, but I think right now the question is there a way to save money? Is there a way to keep people safe? And are there so many contested races that it would warrant going forward? And maybe that's where we need to start and look at it. So that's certainly how I've started to look at this issue and really the common sense of it. And after hearing all the testimony brought forth at the public hearing and the comments generally from the public, where we can keep monies in the coffers to help with basic services in our government during these times, I can't be opposed to that. Of course I want to do that. So I just want to add those sentiments, Madam Speaker, because I think we need to really just calm down and get back to what is this Bill 375 aiming to do. And I think its intention is quite clear, what it's aiming to do. So if you disagree with that, you disagree with 375. If you think that that's a valid point, then it's something worth consideration. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Senator Torres. There is an amendment on the floor. Does everybody have a chance to see the amendment? So colleagues, it's FA 375 MCT L1P2 PDF. Did everybody get it before? Again, FA 375 MCT L1P2 PDF. Colleagues, does everybody have it? Before I give the... Colleagues, does everybody have it? Everybody has it now. I will allow the author of the amendment to go ahead and read the amendment and speak on it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this amendment is to lines 1 to 8 of page 2, and it is to amend the bill to read Section 2, title, Cancellation of the 2020 Primary Election. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, the primary election shall be canceled for the year 2020, and all qualified candidates for the primary shall advance to the general election, and to allow Legislative Council to make technical corrections throughout the bill. And Madam Speaker, this again is just an amendment to make this an act to cancel as opposed to an amendment to the law, which needs to be codified in Guam Code annotated. So just short and sweet and to the point.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Castro, then Senator Lee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is directed to the proffer of the amendment. I see this as a technical change to the original language, so I might as well direct my questions now. My first question would be, if she would yield, and I'll state my question, does the proffer of the amendment know how many clients go through the Department of Revenue and Taxation? And the reason why I ask this is because I'm trying to make an informed decision if, in fact, going to an election polling site has greater risk than you would going to the Department of Revenue and Taxation, because that will help me determine if we would herald or hold in some kind of sanctimonious position the ability to get a driver's license but not go to the polls. So anyone, if the author of the proffer of the amendment would yield, or anybody for that matter.
Senator Torres, would you like to yield to that?
Madam Chair, quite honestly, I don't know what that question has anything to do with my amendment. My amendment is simply a technical change that makes it an act as opposed to a change to the law. So to that section of the law. But insofar as would I know statistics on rev and tax? Of course I wouldn't. I wouldn't have that number. And it's
Thank you, Senator
misplaced.
Torres. Senator Castro.
Sorry, I have a point of inquiry then, and I appreciate the response. Let me ask then, this may determine if I support this particular amendment or in fact amend the amendment. So my question to the author of the amendment, or any, Masaya Hajina Senador, Mangagi Gwini Nungsonik Mon Estina Priniponi, would you support the cancellation of all primary elections hereafter in any instance where there is a sign of COVID on the island of Guam? That's a yes or no question for the proffer of the amendment or anybody who has authored or co-authored this bill. I'll restate the question. Would you support the cancellation of all primary elections going forward if there's even any evidence of COVID on the island? One instance or 100?
I'm going to yield that question to the the author of the amendment first or the author of the bill. If you would like to yield, you don't have to yield. I'm just going to proffer it that way. A question was asked, and you can answer or not answer. I yield to you, Senator Torres, as the author of the amendment.
Madam Speaker, I cannot predict if there will ever be an eradication of COVID. So I will limit my amendment to the 2020 election where there does exist a declared state of emergency on Guam and worldwide with regard to COVID. I cannot speculate on the COVID, bubonic plague, polio, or any other thing that would be a scourge on society. So I'll limit it just to the 2020 election.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Will, does that suffice?
Not really, Madam Speaker, because I'm trying to discern for myself what the threshold is, whether it's at 1 COVID or 1,000, whether you're in a state of emergency or not. Based on testimony from yesterday and based on what I heard from my colleague proffering this bill, the threat is real. I never heard under duress, under emergency declaration. So my question then, which would help me better understand what is it we're attempting to do, Safa na temporario este na priniponi. If you support the cancellation of all primary elections, I just might vote for this. But to make an exception to this election, I just don't see the legal, medical, or public policy basis upon which to support either the amendment or the bill on its face.
Senator Will, I'm going to ask you, is that
The short answer to that, Madam Speaker, is no. That does not satisfy my very straightforward question. It was a yes or no question.
I understand that. I'm just going to say, are you objecting to the bill, or would you like the author of the
I'm objecting to the amendment, Madam Speaker, and I wouldn't, it's okay. She doesn't need to have a second bite of the apple. Thank you. I understand what you're trying to
I was going to
say.
yield to the author of the legislation.
Please, por favor, ang ginsinga po na opino hafar guahano que faisingwe, por favor.
Senator Moylan, would you like to yield as the author of the legislation in reference to this? Question by Senator Castro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the question. I believe we are discussing on the amendment as introduced, and likewise, it just strengthens the bill, I believe, and also both the bill and the amendment speak of this primary election. And who want to discuss future, I think I would prefer we just stick with the topic. And
Thank you, Senator Moylan.
thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Castro, you still have the floor.
Madam Speaker, por favor, ang by who repiti hafano que faisin hami. I'm trying to understand from a rational basis. Polo ay isinenta ko, gibanda ko. Someone made a call, let's set the sentiments aside. So please, somebody in a position of knowledge and experience and authority, please advise me. Are we doing this because we're saving money? You're doing this under the threat of COVID? Because if it's under the threat of COVID, or now are we discussing this under the pretense, or actually the declared fact, that we're in emergency declaration, despite evidence to the contrary nationwide and internationally, that they too are under similar circumstances but have conducted their primary elections. But the reason why it's important to my questioning, Madam Speaker, is because I'm trying to discern if it's okay to line up for driver's license at DRT, which is a government service, or go to a social at a beach for a christening, but it's not okay to vote under a higher threshold of protection for the people of Guam. I'm sorry, no, both answers do not satisfy, nor have they changed my mind with respect to defeating both the amendment and the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Anyone else on the main amendment? Senator Therese, I will acknowledge you.
Thank you. I support this amendment. The amendment is very straightforward, and it makes the bill very clear, and I think consistent with the intent, that this bill is intended only for the 2020 primary. And in the findings and intents, it lays out why the 2020 primary and not any other primary, and that is because 2020 is unique. We are facing we are under a health emergency, as the author of the amendment stated, and we are facing budget shortfalls. that is, so I support this amendment because it would make the bill clearer, and I want there to be no misunderstanding as to whether this would have permanent impacts, Madam Speaker, and so I thank the author for the amendment.
Thank you, Senator Terlai. Anyone else on the main, on the amendment? If not, Senator Will, do you
I
have
have a point of inquiry. Point of inquiry, if you would
Please state
permit
your
me
question.
to ask the retiring speaker if she would yield. Sejus Masi put through.
Senator, we are on the main amendment right now. The good senator from Jonia spoke on the amendment, and based on that, if there is a point of inquiry, it should be based on the amendment to the author. So you can either voice your objection to that, and we'll move forward on, please, on the amendment as stated. And if there's anyone else wishing to speak on the amendment, Senator Castro, I will go ahead and accept at this time. If not, Senator Torres, would you like to close or call for the vote?
Call for the vote, please.
On the Senator Mary Torres amendment, is there any objection? There is an objection. There is a couple of objections. All those in favor of this amendment signify by raising your hand, please. Motion carries. We are now back. Senator Torres, you still got a minute or two. If not, anyone else on the main question? Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Therese, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the bill, and I want to make it clear because I appreciate the debate that we are having. I very much appreciated the public hearing that we had yesterday. I did not want to go forward with this bill without a public hearing because this affects, I acknowledge that this may affect candidates, and and I acknowledge that. I don't know all the ways that it might affect candidates or voters, but I will acknowledge that it does affect them. And I have heard from mayoral candidates in those villages where the elections are contested, that same party, that some of them oppose. Of course, some of them have no objection, but there are objections, and I want to acknowledge that. And I'm not trying to be insensitive to those. But just in line with my support of the bill in general, it's because of the unique circumstances that I believe we are under today. So this is not intended for any personal consequences. And to be honest with you, I try to figure out what the effects might be in the congressional race under my own speculation, and I'm not a, I couldn't figure it out. So, maybe there are others who can figure that out better than me, but I believe those are all speculation at this point, Madam Speaker. And, but they are clearly not intended. I actually personally prefer a primary. I love it. We love the elections. If we're going to run, then let's have it, right? But I am very concerned. I mean, our whole lifestyle, we have tried to reconcile in the last few months, and every day, what are we going to do under these emergency circumstances? Are we still at risk or are we not? That's really the basic question, right? Do we put on events that put ourselves more at risk, or do we not? And we all know we cannot put off a general election. That would clearly be, we just couldn't even consider that. We've considered other measures, can we do absentee ballots or allow people to vote in advance because of the health emergencies, other suggestions that the Election Commission has given to us. The issue is that, we are under a time crunch. So one of the suggestions, and that I thought was reasonable, that if we are going to try to protect the health of the people of Guam, and to be consistent with what the current the current protocols are, under this emergency, that we are trying to prevent large gatherings and we are trying to prevent unnecessary interaction or, extended interaction over extended periods and to, prevent the spread of the disease, of course. We're also trying, and I think the previous speaker had an excellent point. She laid it out so nicely. I don't really need to add anything onto that about the savings. It's like, there is a potential savings. It's not huge savings. It's not even $1 million. It's up to $400,000 by canceling a primary. And maybe in past legislatures, that's not much, but I think it's a lot right now. We are looking at services that we are going to be unable to provide. We are looking at people who have been homeless or actually are facing, because, of the joblessness, facing risk of homelessness. And I'm very concerned about that, Madam Speaker. The jobless numbers are really astounding, and I think sobering is an understatement. We need to get together and make alternate plans. We need to plan so that nobody gets left behind, that we can't take care of one class and not the other. We are all in this together, and we need to take care of everybody. So this is, for me, about public health concerns, and I trust the Guam Election Commission to do their utmost best to conduct an election that is safe. And we are absolutely counting on them to do that in November for the general. And we're going to have to go with whatever protocols between they and public health decide are the best that we could come up with the resources we have and the time we have. And that's where the primary, for me, is a little different, because the primary, we have less time. And literally, the Guam Election Commission knows what they have to do. I think they think they could also, come up with other measures, they said, if they had more time. But they know right now that they have to hire 450 people at least to cover these elections. So they have a plan. The issue is they've only hired to date 300. They say they're considering increased incentives because they have been unable to hire the remaining 35 that they originally needed, and now they're just going to begin to try to hire the 150 additional workers that they're going to put in place at these polling sites to, it's for safety, it's for health measures. So we're going to have to put those in place at the general election, I'm pretty sure as well. But it's again, they talked yesterday at the public hearing about training for these employees, that the director of the Election Commission wants these employees to be trained, and that, we've got very precious little time left to do that, and to get the equipment and set up. Even she talked about there's just additional measures, additional polling places that they could use, divide these polling places even more so that they spread them out from one classroom or cafeteria to others, from one school to multiple, just to decrease the crowds. And so I know they're going to work very hard, and I trusted them when I walked into that Jotnya election, but let me tell you, I've never seen that many people at a polling place. It was like all hands on deck from the Election Commission, because I know the employees, so I could recognize them, plus others. We had National Guard, we had, not the National Guard, the marshals from the judiciary were there, and they had other employees who, because there's with the additional safety precautions, there's this additional task. So anyways, while we as a community might debate, whether we need to wear masks or we don't, or whether, we need to keep these limits on gatherings or we don't, or whether, we should just open everything up and not worry about the travelers or not. I mean, the community's debating that, but that is normal. That is what's happening across the nation. but also across the nation, I would like to adhere, to what has been recommended, and across the nation, they consider these health risks as well. So I think to say that everybody else is conducting their primaries, they are doing the same thing we are doing, Madam Speaker. They are considering whether there are any other ways that they can conduct these things that would make it safer. We talked about, the Election Commission also talked about, drive-through voting, and we talked about that a little bit with the public health official that came to the hearing yesterday. The drive-through voting, they say, will take additional personnel and it will take additional time. And so all of these things change, the dynamics of the voting place. And it really, my dad voted by mobile in the car at the Georgia election. We begged him not to go, but he insisted he wants to vote. So he went, did it, from the car, and it did take significantly longer. And so when we've seen the lines when we on regular voting, we've seen the lines on the public health, when that's 500 people, they said, in line. And I just, the numbers that we're talking about, we're expecting many more. We're also expecting that the voters of Guam, 40% of those are Manamko, according to the Guam Election Commission. Well, over 55 years old. Let me rephrase that. So over 55 years old are 40% of our voters. And those, of course, correspond with the higher risk. And this is not the same activity as going, to Ross or the bar, as the previous speakers have said. This is a very unique activity, one that we want to afford to everyone. And we want, I thought in good faith, we are trying to ensure that no candidate is adversely affected. We move all of them up to the general. And that only for me, I can speak, I'm doing that in good faith, and I can't speculate on all the other implications of that, except that instead of ruling any of them out, we move all of them forward. That was the compromise, to not having a primary. I wanted to say very quickly that, the New York case that was talked about earlier, it's a very unique case. It talks about whether the Democratic candidates who suspended their campaigns and then were removed from the ballot, thus there was no contest and the board canceled the primary, those were candidates to determine who was going to go to the convention. So the burden was in removing those candidates from the ballot when that was the only way those delegates were going to be able to participate in the Democratic National Convention. Not whether they would be elected to office, but participate in that. And I think, we can distinguish what we're trying to do here today. We're not trying to prevent anybody from getting on the ballot. In fact, we're trying to ensure everyone stays on the ballot, and the voters are afforded the opportunity to vote on everyone. And so, once again, Madam Speaker, I just think, we have to, things change. I was in here a couple months ago in the beginning of the pandemic, maybe March or April, I can't remember the month at that point, repeating the statistics that were given to us by the, surgeon cell or the physicians advisory group to the governor, the statistics of how many people, we don't do something like this, are going to die, our hospitals are at max. And I am so grateful to everyone that we are not there, and I really believe that's out of love for each other. We love our families, we love our elders, and we will do whatever it takes to protect them. But I just feel if this is a reasonable way to ensure we continue with an election, give the Guam Election Commission more time, and if we are able to save money while we are doing it and use that money for the needs that we are seeing in front of us, Madam Speaker, then I do that in good faith. Si Diyos mas.
Buen provecho, Senator Chalai. Anyone else on the main amendment? Senator Regine Biscoli, you are recognized at this time.
Si Diyos masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a point of inquiry for the author of this measure, if he will yield.
State your question, please, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canceling the primary will elect mayors and vice mayors through a plurality of the vote in the general election. So for a village like Jigo, who has 6 candidates running for mayor, just statistically speaking, that could mean installing a village mayor for 4 years with as little as 20% support in their municipality. And so my question is, the author of this bill supportive of that little of a mandate leading to a 4-year term?
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Moylan, would you like to yield to the question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the question. Again, like similar questions, we go to that may lead, or there is speculation that it could be, or what if this, or what if that. Madam Speaker, I don't have any prediction of how it could be or may be. I just, as others have spoken about the bill, that this is about the primary election for 2020. And just canceling that, and as amended as well. So, Madam Speaker, that's my response to the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Biscoli, does that
Si Diyos
answer?
masa, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in opposition to Bill 375 because I believe that this measure's very laudable goals will not be realized in the real world. Madam Speaker, the author of this measure declined to speculate about the possibility of a runoff election for Guam's at-large delegate seat, and again declined to speculate about the idea that a village leader with a 4-year term could receive as little as 20% support in their village. But I think it's really important for the public and also for this body to recognize what election experts have said about this matter. Madam Speaker, just yesterday, the Guam Election Commission Executive Director Maria Pangilinan told this body that there is a possibility that a 3-way race for Congress will end up with a runoff. Mr. Juan Carlos Benitez, who is a political operative who voiced his personal opinion yesterday on the matter, said there is a, quote, guarantee of a runoff, and that the cancellation of a primary will result, and again I quote, in an uneven and unbalanced playing field in the race for Congress. Madam Speaker, we can't ignore these statements because doing so will do a disservice to those who believe that this bill will save money, to those who believe that this bill could potentially save lives. If there is a general and a subsequent runoff election, there will be no meaningful cut to government spending. If there is a general and then a subsequent runoff election, there will be no lowered risks to the community in terms of COVID. We have to face reality, Madam Speaker, even if some would rather talk about this bill in principle rather than what this bill would mean in practice. Eliminating this year's primary election, Madam Speaker, in my mind, will result in 3 very serious issues for our community who deserve free and fair elections. First off, it would force village residents to be led by a mayor or vice mayor, only elected by a plurality of votes. Madam Speaker, we're talking about Jigo, one of our most heavily populated villages, Malasu, Asin Maina, Umatic, Talafofo, Aganya Heights, electing someone to a 4-year term in those villages with as little as only 20% of their constituency supporting that individual. That is a disservice to the people that we all swore to serve. Secondly, Madam Speaker, it is unfair to our voters who are trying to decide their nominee for delegate. And that cuts both ways. It does a disservice to both sides of the aisle. It can deprive Democrats of selecting one candidate to unite behind, but it can also deprive the Republicans from a fair and equal opportunity to offer their own candidate to voters, regardless of party affiliation. Finally, Madam Speaker, and for me, this is the big one, election reform is a very serious issue. It's one that requires thoughtful deliberation and fair warning to the candidates, to political parties, to voters of Guam, who all need to deal with these fundamental changes. And that's not what happened here. We rushed into session and rushed back after hearing these measures less than 24 hours ago. You know, I'm totally open to discussing ways that we can increase voter turnout, ways that we can further protect our voters with the potential expansion of maybe in-office voting or other means. And Madam Speaker, I'll admit, this bill does look great on paper, and it's an easy way to get headlines. After all, who among us wants to be the advocate for the government to spend more money, especially at a time like this? Or, you know, for the public to be put at a greater risk of COVID. But our election experts have told us that Bill 375's potential benefits are far from guaranteed. If we are going to end up having 2 elections, because that's the reality that we have to face, one primary election and one general is far more fair to all involved than one general and one runoff. For these reasons, Madam Speaker, I remain opposed to this measure, and I hope that our colleagues will use the best available perspectives offered to us, including the testimony, yesterday's testimony from the Guam Election Commission, to do the right thing here. Let's give candidates and our voters a fair shot. Sudos Masi.
Buen provecho, Senator Lee. Anyone else?
Point of information, Madam Speaker.
I will recognize your point of information.
Thank you. We did also receive testimony yesterday from Dr. Ron McNinch saying that he did not believe that the runoff was probable. And the runoff has always been a possibility in our elections. It's not one that is caused by this circumstances. The same thing with the plurality. That's in our existing, code, and it's always a possibility that mayors will be elected with, less than 50% plus one vote in those villages.
Madam Speaker, just a point of order.
The Guam Election Commission has said,
Senator Therese, there is a point of order. Senator Lee,
We
please
all
state
have-
your point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We all have an opportunity to speak on the measure. It's my understanding that the retiring speaker has already used up her 15 minutes to speak on the measure.
I
And so-
understand. There was a point of order to share a
Thank you.
statement. I accepted that.
Thank you,
You
Madam
know what?
there's just one more, Madam Speaker. The fiscal note was submitted on this bill, even though the committee report was not. And the fiscal note shows a savings of
Senator
$345,000.
If I may.
Point of information, Madam
Senator
Speaker.
Talahi, hold on, everybody. According to the clerk, that testimony was not submitted. So on the motion to accept that, it has not been submitted and it's not with the clerk. So,
You mean from the public hearing?
no, you're reading Dr. McNitch.
No, I'm.
Point of information, Madam Speaker.
State your
Or
point
point
of
of order?
information, Senator Lee.
At the very beginning of the discussion on this bill, I rose to a point of information to this body to let our colleagues know that no committee report was submitted for this bill.
understand.
And so again, just,
Du- Duly noted, Senator Lee, duly noted.
Point of
you
information
know
to the
what?
previous statement, Madam Speaker. This is
Senator,
information not previously known to the body. I'd also like to qualify the previous statement by saying the same person she attributes credit to also erroneously attributed causality to an anticipated outcome that's untrue. That's the point of information.
Thank you, duly noted. We're going to go ahead and take.
Madam Speaker, I have the floor. If I could
Senator
just finish the
Chalahi.
point. It's stuff that should be on
Senator
the record.
Chalahi, at
Yes.
this time, I will take a brief recess. It is lunch. We will break for lunch.
Oh, for
35th Guam Legislature is back from recess. At this time, colleagues, we will break and come back at 2:00 p.m.